On this episode of the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast, we'll be taking a brief look inside the Week 4 action of the National Football League, and I will be joined with my man Josh once again, going over the NHL season. We'll be doing some previews and some bold predictions. That's all coming your way next on the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast.
Oh, indeed. I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
What's going on, guys? You're listening to episode 7 of the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in again. You can email me, kirbyonsports@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter, Kirby on Sports, and on Facebook, Kirby on Sports podcast. I have in the studio today my good friend Josh once again. Say what's up, Josh. How you doing?
What's up, man? I'm good.
Yeah, that was a fail of a high five there. Like, let's do that again. Yeah, there we go. Better high five for you. But thanks again for joining us in the studio. And really quickly, Week 4 scores. I want to start off with your little bet going on with whoever, and your Browns lost in overtime. You're like a Browns fan because of this bet now. So, 45-42, they could not finish it in overtime, and the Raiders got their first win.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm not I like the Browns. I think this story is pretty cool, especially from watching, like we talked about on the one podcast, watching Hard Knocks. Yeah,
I loved that ending, but I wish they would do it through the NFL season.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I mean, it makes you like the team more, definitely, I think.
It makes you want to follow them more, you know?
Well, and so the bet I have is with my friend Jordan at work. And we bet he thinks that the Browns will not go 500, and I bet that they would go 500. Obviously, I looked over it today, and I know I was telling you about this earlier, and someone brought this up at work. I mean, the fact is, the Browns are, in essence, a field goal away in every single one of their games, aside from the one they won, of course, from being 4-0.
Yeah.
So it's not like they've been getting blown out. It's not like any of it's been lopsided. I mean, every single game has been so close, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, because I know the Redskins for a long time, a lot of those years, they would have really close games or they were like one possession games. But if you don't win, you don't win. So it's like,
yeah. So hopefully you'll win that bet. In my opinion, I don't think you will, because the Browns are still rebuilding. In my opinion, I do like they put Baker in. Tyrod obviously wasn't the answer, so I mean, we'll see how it happens, but the Raiders got their first win. The $100 million man, John Gruden, finally gets a win. I mean, John Gruden getting put into the system. I mean, he's been out of coaching in a booth for so long and going back. I just think the NFL has changed since the last time he's been a coach, and I think that's why he hasn't been doing so well yet.
Well, I think it's that. I mean, also, for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem like, ever since the Raiders went on that crazy run, was it like 2 seasons ago, where they were doing really, really, really well.
Yeah, then Carr broke his thumb or something.
No. He broke like his fibula. I can't remember. It was something serious. I want to say it was something in his leg, I believe.
No, I thought he broke his thumb first, then his fibula.
Well, I know when he went out, I believe he broke. I know he broke something in his leg. I from what I recall, but
yeah, and they barely missed the playoffs, if I can recall correctly.
Yeah, and no, I think they made it that year, but they got knocked out in like the wild card game or something like that. I can't remember for sure, but it's just weird because like the Raiders, it's like everybody had this expectation because of that season, and then obviously they signed Derek Carr to that really big deal, and they just, they haven't really been able to put it together, I feel like, since then. And I mean, I granted, I think you have to give John Gruden some time, because like you said, he's just coming back. I think he's a good enough coach to where he will adjust.
Yeah.
I certainly don't think, I don't think that he's going to just like be a terrible coach all of a sudden just because he was out for as long as he was. But I think it will be an adjustment period. Losing Khalil Mack hurts a lot, because I know at least the first game that I watched them play, I just remember distinctly thinking like just how they could barely get any pressure on the quarterback. I was like, man, they could really use Khalil Mack right now.
Yep, and look what he's doing for the Bears. Oh my goodness, like he is going off. But yeah, I mean John Gruden. I mean, from his time in the Monday night booth, I think he missed coaching when he was up there calling games, and he just. I think he knew a lot. He was a great color commentator, but I just think he missed it too much and wanted to go back to coaching.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, I think another game we can talk about that was awesome. I don't know if this is skipping ahead too much, but that game the other night, the Broncos and the Chiefs, was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, we were watching it together. Like, man, like Patrick Mahomes switches the ball to his left hand and completes a pass.
While getting chased by Von Miller.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, he's going down. Von Miller's in pursuit. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's still early in the season, but honestly, like, there's no indicator to me that says like, oh, this dude's just gonna like fall off. Right. He doesn't risk his body that much. At least from the games I've seen him in, it seems like he's pretty smart and he likes to stay in the pocket, which is a big thing because going back to the Browns, I think that's the biggest difference between Baker and Tyrod is, Tyrod every single time he felt, just from when I was watching it, it seemed like every single time he felt any pressure, his immediate response was to run out of the pocket and usually run for, sometimes, he got some good yards, but he's a quarterback.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's a bad quarterback, but the fact that a rookie can stick in the pocket and stick it out longer than he can, says that they got the right guy in there now to me.
Yeah,
so.
I can already tell this podcast is going to go over our time limit because I do have to just ask you, can we make the argument this early that Patrick Mahomes will become an elite quarterback in the National Football League?
The ingredients are definitely there. I don't watch as much football as you do. I'm definitely more of a hockey guy, but I do enjoy football a lot. Man, I don't know. I would say the stuff is definitely there. And like I said, he does stay in the pocket. He has no interceptions this year, which is crazy.
He has more passes from his non-dominant hand than he does interceptions this season. I saw that on Facebook through ESPN.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I will say, though, a lot of the things that get quarterbacks that are younger, I feel like in trouble, is that fight or flight response where they just, as soon as they feel that pressure, they want to run, especially if they're athletic quarterbacks. With him having that ability to hang in the pocket and not immediately try to, he goes out when he needs to, to evade pressure, which obviously he should do. But I would say, the biggest thing that hurts guys like that is injuries. I don't think he's like an RG3 or a Colin Kaepernick, where Kaepernick, when he was playing, had the tendency to run a lot as well as RG3. And just from what I remember in their time, when they were forced to be more of pocket passers, it just didn't really work out for them that well. Cap was definitely more of a pocket guy from what I remember than RG3 was in that, but
yeah, RG3 just took off running.
Yeah. He was great. He was great at it, but
he was great till he got injured.
Yeah. But
luckily he's on the Ravens now. I'm surprised he got the starting job. I'm surprised he made the cut, but, hopefully that just gives him a career revival somehow.
Yeah. So in summary, I think it's early, but I absolutely, the ingredients are all there for him to become an elite quarterback. If he keeps, there's going to be some tough times in his career. No quarterback just goes through and, has a great season every season or, game to game, there's going to be stuff, game to game, there is going to be things that come up that are tough. But yeah, so far, 4 games into the season, he's shown no indicator that he's going to be anything other than what he's shown so far. So
Yeah, I just think he has the stuff, like you said, to be an elite quarterback. It is early, but I think Andy Reid and the Chiefs had confidence in him after letting Alex Smith go, and I think he can be an elite quarterback. Maybe not this year, but in years to come. Like this is his first season starting, but I think everything's in place if he can stay healthy. Like a lot can change in 17 weeks in the National Football League, but I mean it can happen. I have confidence that it could happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, and I want to talk to you because this was a shootout in a high-scoring game. The Rams and the Vikings.
You know what? So I did not get to see that game. I remember you told me, like, you texted me. I did watch the highlights.
Yeah.
And I remember you were just like, this game is crazy. It's crazy in LA right now. Yeah, I watched the highlights. I mean, that game was nuts. I think to me, so far, the biggest surprise of this season, more than anything else, more than Fitzpatrick doing as well as he did in the first few games. Obviously, he's benched now.
Yeah, the Fitz magic has ran out.
I don't even think it ran out. I just think when you're a backup, your leash is a lot shorter. So I don't know if that's necessarily fair. But the biggest surprise to me so far this season is the Vikings, because I thought they were going to be really freaking good. And it's not that Kirk Cousins has even not been good. Their defense has not been what people thought it was going to be, I don't think. And, which is really surprising. I mean, like you said, they were in that shootout. I don't know. To me, so far, they're the biggest surprise of the season as far as what I expected going in. I didn't think that they were going to be where they're at right now.
Yeah, well, my bold prediction, I still have to stick with it, that they're going to make it to the Super Bowl. Haven't been looking so good for their record. I mean, Kirk Cousins, my stats are not pulling up, but both quarterbacks in that game had a ton of passing yards. If you can get that on your computer, so I can get the exact number, but I remember I had Kirk Cousins and Cooper Kupp in one of my games, and I had Jared Goff on the bench, which I should have started him. But anyway, I got 50 points in the first game of week 4. And so give me those stats here.
So that game we had Kirk Cousins, 36 for 50, 36-50 rather, and he had 422 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then we had Jared Goff. It looks like, Jared Goff was 26 of 33. And he threw for 465 yards.
Yeah, that's
and
ridiculous.
5 touchdowns.
5 touchdowns and over 400 yards passing.
Well, and I think the stat, at least just on paper, obviously the stats don't always fully tell the story.
But it was a crazy game.
Yeah.
By the stat line,
yeah,
it was amazing in my opinion. And going back to my fantasy football team, Kirk Cousins and Cooper Kupp combined got me over 60 points in fantasy.
Well, and dude, the thing I think that shows you the most from that stat. Now, I mean, like I said, I don't 100% recall everything from that game because I just watched the highlights.
I just watched the highlights too, but I do remember towards the end of the game, Kirk Cousins fumbled and the Rams recovered, and that pretty much just sealed the game.
Well, and here's your big stat line there. You've got 33 attempts by Jared Goff and 50 by Kirk Cousins.
Man.
So, I mean, I don't know if, the assumption is always that you had the ball a lot more if you had 50 passing attempts in that game.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know. I mean, but at the same time, like I said, it's if you score, if you score over 30 points in a game, in the NFL, generally speaking, if you have a good defense, you should win.
Yeah.
I mean,
defense wins championships.
Yeah, I mean, you should win if you score that many points. Yeah. Over 30 points your defense should be able to hold up. So
yeah. So The Rams, I think they're gonna be going deep in the playoffs this year. Like by the looks of things right now. Of course, 17 weeks in a season, a lot can change. But right now, I think they're gonna make a big push to make it to the playoffs.
Man, I gotta say too, with the weapons they have, like just going back to the Chiefs, I mean, I think they could really go deep.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously,
Cooper Kupp's been playing amazing.
well, and the Magic could run out. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? It could with them. I mean, Mahomes could end up, you know, I mean, I don't know. You know, he could end up falling off, but I don't see that happening. And I mean, when you have Tyreek Hill, you know, on your team, and what is the gosh darn name of their running back? Hunt.
Yeah, Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, Kareem Hunt had an amazing game the other night too. So I mean, Tyreek Hill in and of himself is a massive, massive weapon with that speed. You know, they're a pretty gosh darn good team.
Yeah. Similar teams. I mean,
Yeah,
they're playing great.
high flying offense on both teams.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, Chiefs, they're looking like they can have a big playoff push too, just like the Rams. But we'll see. I mean, long season.
And now, for my surprise of the season so far, semi-surprise, semi-not, I don't know. I guess I already kind of, you know, I don't know that I really said a surprise. I said my surprise disappointment with the Vikings.
Yeah.
The Ravens. What the heck? I thought they were just not going to be that good this year. You know, with Joe Flacco. I mean, he's not old, but I've never thought, I mean, granted the guy's won Super Bowl, so I can't really say much, but I've never thought he was spectacular. And I just kind of thought they were on the downturn, but I mean, I was dead wrong.
Yeah, came in on Sunday night to Pittsburgh and beat them 26-14. Like,
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's looking very dysfunctional this year.
And now that does not surprise me.
Yeah.
I told my friend.
Le'Veon Bell holding out.
Yeah.
They say he's not going to be back till their bye week if he doesn't get traded. I'm not sure what the situation with that is. But
Well, and I think they'll welcome him back with open arms now because they're not in the best position. I don't think it's because of quarterback, or I mean, rather running back. I think he adds to the team a lot.
he just wants
but-
to get paid, though.
I don't want to speak too soon, but I definitely just feel, and I said this at the beginning of the season, talking to some people about football and stuff. I just think Big Ben is on the back nine. He's not even on. He's on the last 3 holes of his career. I just don't think that. I don't know. I mean, Peyton Manning was certainly not as good as him when he won his Super Bowl with the Broncos, but the Broncos also had an outstanding defense. So I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, I personally think they kind of need to start thinking about, I wouldn't necessarily say a full rebuild. I would call it more of like a retooling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anybody who knows fantasy, please answer this question for me. What should I do with Le'Veon Bell? Because he's just chilling on my bench because he likes to hold out. I drafted him first. I should have read the news, but I had no clue he was holding out. And I was in astonishment when he did, and he's just on the bench chilling on my fantasy team. So, anyways, let's move on here. A few division scores. The Saints beat the Giants 33-18. Giants are in last place in the NFC East. Titans beat the Eagles in overtime 26-23. I was happy about that. Really happy.
A lot of overtime games this year too.
Yeah, Texans beat the Colts 37-34 in overtime. And was there another one? No, I thought there were 3. There were 2. But
I mean, the Browns alone have been in what? 3? No, 2?
Oh yeah. The
2 or 3 overtime
that was an
games?
overtime game
Yeah.
too. I didn't have it marked on here, but another division game. The Cowboys last second field goal beat the Lions 26-24, which I was just disappointed about because I wanted the Cowboys to lose that game, and they didn't. But still, with the Redskins bye week, they are still in first place, 2-1 so far, and going to play the Saints on Monday night, week 5. And looking forward to that matchup. Saints, obviously, Drew Brees in a position to break Peyton Manning's record.
It's pretty much a foregone conclusion, I think, at this point.
Yeah, against the Redskins, you don't know what's going to happen, but
even I think
201 yards in a
Yeah.
game. That can easily happen against the Redskins, depending on which Redskins team.
I think
shows
no
up.
matter who you're playing, it's certainly not uncommon for quarterbacks to have well over 200 yards nowadays in games. So, just look, we were looking at those stats for the Rams and the Vikings. That was a crazy game.
Yeah.
So,
Yep, and running down the rest of the scores, the Jags beat the Jets 31-12. Pats crushed the Dolphins 38-7. Packers just shut out the Bills 22-0. Bears over the Buccaneers 48-10 in that game. Ryan Fitzpatrick gets benched for Jameis Winston. Bengals squeak one out over the Falcons 37-36. And boy, the Falcons have been in a lot of shootouts this season so far. Seahawks over the Cardinals 20-17. As Jonah was saying in my previous episode, I think episode 5, the Cardinals might become the next Cleveland Browns here because, new quarterback Josh Rosen after Sam Bradford got benched and new coach. I think the Cardinals are rebuilding, and that's it on that. And other scores, Chargers beat the 49ers 29-27, and that's all the scores for week 4. And that's it. Week 4. And we're moving on here to Josh's favorite topic.
that's right.
The banner raising.
Yeah.
Oh man. You watched that game. I think you probably cried a little bit when they raised that banner. That was a great ceremony.
I'll tell you what, man, when they play that video with the Mumford and Sons song, I Will Wait.
I will wait. I will wait for you.
That one jerks tears, man. I think just like we talked about in the first podcast, I think ever. Yeah, pretty much ever that I was on with you.
You were on my inaugural podcast.
Yeah. It's just special, man. I think, like I've mentioned before, just waiting for that long and then just it just feels good. It feels really good. In our lifetime, we've never had a meaningful, I don't want to knock the DC United or anything, but, or the Washington Valor. but
2-10 and come back and win the championship.
But, we've never had a meaningful sports championship here. I think the last time the Redskins won the Super Bowl was either the year I was born or when I
wasn't
1.
even born. So
I
remember.
I wouldn't remember it at all either because I was 1 maybe.
Yeah.
So definitely I think in terms of DC, I know this has been talked about and a lot of people argue about this, but I think it's kind of a no-brainer that Ovechkin is the greatest DC athlete of all time. I cannot think of anybody.
That's a really
greater.
good argument. I'm gonna have to agree with you because I cannot think of anybody else who would be greater than Ovechkin in DC sports. Bryce Harper. I don't think he can compare.
Well, and then again, consistency.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Ovechkin, I think the worst year he's ever had was 30-something goals, which is still more than most guys will ever score in a single season in their career. So, just the level of consistency, and he's just, he's so good. It is so hard to score goals in today's NHL. The goalies are so much better. Not to make a knock on anybody from the past in the NHL, in the 80s, 90s with, the Gretzkys and stuff, because Gretzky is still the greatest player of all time. But, those records that he has and some of those ones that stand, the single season goal record is never, ever, 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 ever going to be broken. It's too hard to score nowadays. I mean, Ovechkin once in his career, I believe it was 62 goals that he scored once in his career, or it might have been more. I believe it was 62 though. But I mean, I feel that that's pretty much as close as we're ever going to get to, I mean, because I believe Gretzky, it was over 90 goals, I believe, in his season, and that's the single season record. So I don't see that ever happening again.
Yeah. So before we get into that banner raising game a little bit, I want to talk about big story starting off the regular season. Tom Wilson with a 20-game suspension. Do you think it was a little too much, him getting 20 games for that head-to-head hit? Obviously, it was a head-to-head hit. I don't like the fact that
shoulder to head, yeah.
Yeah, shoulder to head. I mean, still, should have been suspended, but should it have been for this long?
Do I think it should have been 20 games? I don't know. That's really hard. I'm going to say I don't know about 20 games. Yeah. Considering I believe his longest suspension prior to this was 4 games, from what I recall. I do understand, like the NHL came out and said in their video explaining the suspension and everything, they said that he has had 4 suspensions for hits within, within the past 105 games, which is a lot. I mean, that is too frequent, and it's never happened, I think they said, in the history of the Department of Player Safety. So no, I think 20 games was a little much. I expected, and a lot of people did, in the realm of 10 to 15. I don't know.
I feel like that would have been more reasonable.
It's really, really hard too, because Tom Wilson is also bigger than a lot of guys. I mean, I think he's like 6'4". So, your shoulder's already that much closer to someone else's head. I think the biggest thing on that hit specifically is it is a hit he absolutely did not have to make. It was totally unnecessary. Yeah. So,
and I think in that regard, the NHL is just sending a message like, don't do that or you'll get punished a lot.
Well, and they're going through the same thing that the NFL is with headshots.
Yeah.
Because they've had their share of CTE issues with guys too. So that's definitely an issue. I mean, it sucks that it's 20 games. It really does, and I definitely think it should have been less. However, I mean, I don't know. Some people, and I understand you want to stick up for your teammate. I mean, they feel like it shouldn't have been a suspension. I don't see a world in which that is not a suspension.
Yeah.
I mean, and in any terms, I mean, yes, the guy has his head down, but it's not quite a blindside hit, but it's pretty darn close to it, because he was coming off the bench and the guy had no idea he was there. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, keep your head up. And yeah, I agree with that. But it's just, again, it's a hit he doesn't have to make, and it really does nothing for the game or the team. Yeah. I do think...
And it's preseason. What the heck? And there have been so many fights in preseason.
And I will say, I think that there was a little motivation there in the sense of retribution because of what happened in the last game that they played against the Blues, where Kempney got taken out and elbowed in the head. But at the end of the day, there's no way that it's not a suspension. I mean, length of suspension you can argue, but he's got to be smarter. He's too important to the team now. He's not some fourth line goon, and those guys don't really exist in the NHL nowadays anyway. You can't be playing like that when you're playing on the top line. You got to make better decisions. And Ovechkin, to be fair, I think the biggest thing, and I was just mentioning this to someone today, is when you're as big as he is and you love to hit. Ovechkin did that a lot at the beginning of his career, and he got actually suspended a few times. I think the issue you run into is when you are constantly looking for contact, like someone like Tom Wilson is, you are going to have some bad hits. Mm-hmm. So I think you kind of need to tape your game off and pick and choose when you want to be throwing those big open ice hits and, really trying to, really finish someone, you got to pick your spots.
Yeah.
I know that's a big part of his game, but you got to be smarter. Again, he's on the top line. He's important to this team. They just signed him to a really big contract for, a player that's had the statistics he's had in his career. So yeah, definitely he's got to clean that up and be. I don't want him to not be physical at all, but he can't. He's got to make better decisions.
Yeah, great point here. So, another question with Wilson: how can he be replaced during his suspension? Who do you think will be stepping up the most in his absence?
Well, I think so far through the 2 games, I think Connolly's okay up there. Connolly is he was drafted as a pretty high skill guy. So I don't mind Connolly up there. I wouldn't mind them trying someone else out. But then again, all the other guys that I feel like you would maybe move up there are guys that I don't necessarily think you want to move off of the lines they're on now because they've got some pretty good chemistry.
Yeah.
So, I think for now, Connolly's fine. I think they could try, I don't know, maybe a guy like Stevenson up there, but I don't even know about Stevenson. But, I think Connolly is more than fine for the time being. And I think he's a really good player. He was a first-round draft pick. So, he's no scrub at all. And, that's one thing I didn't really care for when Trotz was here is I've always thought Connolly had a lot of upside. And when he flashes the skill that he possesses that shows that he was a first-round draft pick. And I did not like how Trotz would scratch him. I never agreed with that. I know sometimes you want to get other guys in the lineup, but I just feel that there were other players that could have gotten scratched that were not as good as Connolly was. So don't know that I necessarily agree with that. So I'm really, really glad to see him playing and getting that expanded role and that he did get moved up because I think he deserves it. And I think he's a really good player.
Yep, that's right. And hopefully he'll be playing hard and we'll save the spot for him and will be playing good in his absence. So let's take a look here. Our banner raising game, the one you cried about because you love the Caps so much. I do too. 7-0 rout to start it off. Scoreline: Oshie, Kuzi, Ovi, Kuzi, Dowd, Carlson, Eller. Your thoughts?
I thought it was awesome because a lot of times they talk about like the Stanley Cup hangover and the emotional letdown from having such a crazy like emotional ceremony. Now I will say I think that the Bruins, just from what I understand, Bergeron, who's their number 1 center, probably the best overall player on their team. He was not 100%, I don't think, but I think. Bottom line, they just came out and they jumped all over the Bruins, and they really just didn't.
Yeah, they started that game off right. Like first goal was scored minutes into that game,
and they were hard on the forecheck.
Yeah.
They just did not relent in that game. So, it's good. It's really, really good to see them come out like that. I did notice, and we'll touch on this obviously a little bit later on, but watching the game tonight, which I won't say too much about, after they won the cup, it's like there's this kind of, I think, once you get over that hurdle, and there's this kind of like calmness about them now, where when they get down, and they've had this a little bit in the past, but like they were down, a couple, or they, and in the playoffs they were down at times too, and they have this confidence, I think, where maybe they might get down and they don't get super down on themselves and like just kind of deflate and completely, fall out of the game. They're pretty good at staying in it and digging back. So that's something I'm really glad to see this season that's carrying over. So it's only 2 games in so far, but
yeah, it's a long season. There's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, and speaking of the Stanley Cup hangover, I don't really know that I buy that with this group of guys. They do have some young guys on the team, of course, but the core of the team are guys that have been around for a while.
Yeah, like the only valuable person we've lost is Jay Beagle. And
Yeah, and I mean, even Jay Beagle is very replaceable. I mean, I would say, and I've heard a lot of people say this, and I agree with this. I think Philip Grubauer. I mean, I love Jay Beagle. Is awesome. He was an awesome guy, super super nice. Just a really 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 good human being. But I think it was a much bigger loss losing Grubauer than it was losing him.
But Grubauer wasn't going to get any starting time with Holtby.
No, absolutely not. But definitely a bigger loss, I think, than Beagle. I mean, I just think a lot of times when you're talking about that Stanley Cup hangover, it's typically with a younger group of guys. And with the core being the age they are and going through as much as they have, I definitely think like any, it's a long season. I think there will be some dry spells in there. But I don't know that I necessarily prescribe to that for this specific group of guys just because, like I said, they've been around for a while. I think they're not stupid. I think they understand how hard it is, obviously losing in the second round as many times as they did, and now finally winning. And, they won every single series in the playoffs on the road. So I do not think that it's going to be I don't think it's going to be like something where, they're not even 500 in the month of October. I definitely expect them to come out pretty strong.
Yeah. Yeah, great stuff there. 7-0 rout. And another thing I want to touch on, should Marchand get suspended for that hit on Lars Eller, gave him a big gash on his side? I felt sorry for that man.
I'm not going to say hate, because I don't know how he is as a guy, as a human being. I strongly, strongly, strongly dislike Brad Marchand. We talked about this a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Like instigating, like his gloves weren't even off and his helmet wasn't off.
With his history, should he get a game or two? Yeah, I think so. Judging by a couple instances that have happened this season where people have gotten suspended for similar incidents, I'm going to say no, he will not. Specifically because Lars Eller was able to fight back. So, and he did end up dropping his gloves, and obviously they ended up fighting. He barely
got any punches off. Like, Marchand grabbed his neck and his jersey by the neck or whatnot.
Yeah, and I mean, Lars Eller's not a fighter, but
he was just in a weird position and couldn't really get that many punches off.
But again,
he had the upper hand.
The cut, and he's fights more, even though he's a small guy. The other thing too is Lars Eller did not get that cut until he dropped his gloves. So, I mean, obviously being a Caps fan, I think, he could get a game or two, but just judging by kind of the standard that I've seen them set so far with like guys getting suspensions for fighting, where they kind of just go after the other guy. Typically it's like a sucker punch scenario where the other guy doesn't get to fight back at all. So I don't know that it'll happen. I would be really happy if he had to sit again, because I think he's not a very nice person.
Yeah,
I'll say it that way.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, and moving on, that banner racing night, well put together, great ceremony, and great game. And the night after, they traveled to Pittsburgh. The team the team they beat to get to Tampa, which once again was an amazing game. But moving on here, Josh, I'll give you the honors. You do the score line for that one.
All right. So let's see. We had in the first, Alexiak got the Penguins on the board. It looks like here first.
Yeah.
And then we had Vrana and Orpik got goals there back to back, made it a 2-1 game. Gensel came in, made it a 2-2 game. Then we had Ovi. He had that deflection that got it to 3-2. Right at the beginning of the second period, we had Letang making it 3-3. Carlson got them back on top at 4-3. And then we had, which was an amazing shot. I mean, Carlson roofed that thing. Gensel got him back at 4-4. Then we had Brassard got him back to 5-4. And a lot of goals in this, too, were deflections.
Yeah.
For the Penguins. I mean, they had a few, but I mean, Holtby, I don't know how much he could have really done in this game.
Yeah. I feel like Holtby was frustrated towards the end over all the deflections and stuff.
Oh, and then we had, let's see, and then the third period, we had Malkin on the power play. Right at the end of the power play, I believe, actually went to full strength, got him to 6-4. And then we had Oshie. 2 goals, and I believe it was 22 seconds.
21 seconds.
21 seconds.
I saw that stat, and I was like, wow. Like, it takes it from the defense. No. Penguins player, terrible pass right to Oshie and score. Yeah, roofs it. And then the second one, like, man, wasn't that a deflection?
Yeah,
deflection almost got point. Called for a high stick, but they changed
their mind on the ice. Yeah.
Toronto had enough evidence to overturn it.
Actually, and that's why Sullivan was so ticked off. They changed their mind within the referees. They conferred on the ice and called it a good goal on the ice, which would have made it almost impossible to overturn even after the review. And even then, the review still said it was a goal. So,
that was great. Valiant effort, but unfortunately it does go to overtime. Letang scores the game-winning goal.
I don't like him at all, but that was an amazing shot.
Yeah, but I mean power play. They have to clean up the penalties. How many penalties did they have that game?
They had too many.
Granted, it was the second game, but still too many penalties.
A lot of it was stick infractions too. I mean, I want to say that some of them are weak, but I think a lot of the penalties they got they're pretty typical to what gets called nowadays. Especially if you get your stick anywhere near the hands, you're getting a hooking penalty. It's just the way it is, or a slash.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this a little bit. That's a game that both coaches do not like.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime
very loose.
Yeah, it's way too loose. You're leaving your goalie out to dry. On both sides of the puck there. Fun to watch to an extent as a fan, but definitely I would say sloppy from both teams. I mean, anytime you're letting 6-7 goals in a game, once you get past, I would even say, once you get to 5, it's like, all right, this was not our best effort. So, and again, like you said, they gave the Penguins way too many opportunities on the power play. And they had the best power play in the league last year, I believe at 26%. So, yeah,
But granted, it is early in the season.
Yeah, it's
a lot they can fix.
Yeah, one game. And I think, typically for whatever reason, the Caps and the Penguins have had a tendency to have some really loose kind of freewheeling games because I think they get kind of hyped up over the rivalry. And like I said, for whatever reason, those games just seem to be a lot more kind of playing on the edge, so to speak, and way, way too loose for the coaches on both sides liking, I think.
Yeah. So, that was a very loose game, as you said before. But Pens won it. How excited are you for the Stanley Cup rematch on Wednesday?
I'm excited, and that also leads me to my bold prediction for the season.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were just about to go into bold predictions. So
it's a perfect segue.
Yeah. I mean, that's our last segment here. Bold predictions, NHL season. Go.
Now, I do know that the Knights picked up a couple pieces this season, but they also had a few guys go out. My bold prediction is I do not think the Knights will make it past the first round of the playoffs this season.
Yeah. My bold prediction is very similar. I don't think the Knights make it to the playoffs.
I think that's very possible as well. I mean, there was certainly something magic. There's going to be a lot of questions riding on them. Obviously, they're playing right now. Will William Karlsson be able to put up that amount of goals again? They had the departures of Tatar, who, kind of seems like a wasted acquisition, really, if you think about it, because I believe he went to the Canadiens. I can't remember for sure, but I believe that's who he went to. But kind of seems like a wasted acquisition because, they got him, barely played him, traded him away. They lost James Neal. They also, Perron went back to the Blues, I believe. So I don't know. I mean, Fleury is still an outstanding goaltender. They played really, really well as a team last year. Obviously, they made it to the final. You don't get there by accident.
Granted, we're Caps fans, but that was a historic year. First time NHL team. They were looking great.
Fleury was incredible up until the final.
Yeah.
And I don't think they make it there if Fleury doesn't play the way he did. I mean, they played well. Give the Knights full credit. They played really, really well because, like I said, you do not get to a Stanley Cup final by accident. And they went through arguably the best team in the NHL, the Winnipeg Jets. They are
and like the amazing acrobatic.
Yeah,
one side to the other on the goal crease, and
yeah, he's crazy. So. Wow. I think a lot of it had to do with Fleury. Fleury's still an amazing goaltender, even, getting up there. He's not even that old. I mean, but, I just get a feeling that, and I mean, maybe we're betting against him and we're going to be totally wrong again. But I do think there's going to be a big letdown this season, and I think there's a much larger expectation there from the organization and from their fans. Being, as we talked about, a first-year expansion team. Now, to be fair, it's not like they're a true expansion team. It was pretty much a team full of all second-line guys that, the teams just couldn't protect. But, I feel I'm with you. I think there's a letdown coming there this year.
Yeah, definitely. So, NHL season coming in full swing. How's Barry Trotz doing so far? Have you kept track of him?
I do not believe their first game of the season, if what I looked at was correct, is until Saturday. I will look that up real quick.
Yeah. So, as I think we mentioned this before, Barry Trotz is without, I lost his name, John Tavares. Yeah. He left for the...
Oh, I take that back. They played tonight. They played tonight. It looks like standings here. They have played.
Yeah, where'd Tavares go again?
Tavares went home. He went to Toronto.
Yeah, that's right. The Maple Leafs. So Barry Trotz without John Tavares. Yeah, I believe Josh that he thought that he would be there to work with Tavares, but I guess that didn't happen.
Yeah, they tried to make it work. I know Lou tried to make it work as well, which is ironic because Lou goes there. He was with the Maple Leafs, and then Tavares goes the other way. It's like almost like an exchange of goods there. I don't know. It is so hard to say. I mean, I love Trotz as a guy. I think he's a really, genuinely an amazing human being. Super, super good guy. But I do think he, as good as he is at instilling a culture, which, don't get me wrong, you cannot undervalue that. He is very old school as a coach.
Definitely.
And he doesn't like young guys. He showed that repeatedly in his time in Washington, that he does not trust young guys. He did not like playing young guys. I mean, we're talking about the guy who sat Nate Schmidt in the playoffs and played Orpik instead. And don't get me wrong, I really like Orpik.
Yeah.
Awesome guy.
Nate Schmidt ended up going to Vegas.
He was sitting for people he should not have been sitting for. So I don't know that his decision-making is the best. I don't know how he's going to do for a young team. Now, granted, I think, maybe from learning the things he has in Washington, maybe he'll learn, I think he is a very teachable guy. At least he's, shown that he seems like he would be that way. So he could be very different. I mean, they are a pretty young team. So we'll see. I really don't know. I don't have a good gauge on that. I don't know that they'll be a playoff team. I think they'll be competitive. I don't see them being in the basement of the Eastern Conference. I think they'll kind of be a middle of the pack team.
I'm just interested to see how they do this season, track Barry Trotz.
Yeah, absolutely, because I still love Barry Trotz.
Yeah.
He's an awesome guy. Yeah. I do think just from what I've read from some sources that were close to the team, apparently, oh my gosh. Of course, I can't remember his name now. New coach of the Caps.
Reardon.
Todd.
How could you forget that?
Because I kept thinking McClellan, which is Brian McClellan, the GM.
Yeah.
Reardon. Todd Reardon. Oh my gosh, I'm an idiot. I follow the Caps that close. Oh, I'm an expert. But Reardon, from what I understand, and just from some things that I read, of course, this is not confirmed, but it seems that he was the one pulling a lot of strings because they had already promoted him to associate head coach. That he was the one pulling a lot of strings when they started to kind of turn things around. And I think Reardon's awesome. I mean, I personally don't believe if any change is going to happen, I think it's going to be for the good. He's a much more progressive coach.
Apparently, a lot of people saw him coming as the replacement after Barry Trotz resigned.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that too.
Yeah.
If you promote a guy to a associate head coach, and you don't let him interview with other teams, it's because you want to keep him, and you're going to make him your head coach. So I think regardless of what happened this season, I mean, obviously they wanted to make things work with Trotz to an extent, but obviously they didn't want to make him work that bad, and they kind of felt they already had their guy in Reardon. So I can't blame him.
Yeah.
I think, again, I just think he's a much more progressive guy. And, there's a lot of guys on the team, like Kempney, for instance, who, said that he pretty much saved their career. So he's really good with young guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And really quick thoughts, your thoughts on Erik Karlsson.
Wild. I didn't, honestly. And I mean, to be fair, I wasn't really super closely following the trade talk with him because it kind of got drug out for so long. I really, really thought he was going to go to Vegas. I really did.
Karlsson's on the team. Wow.
Yeah, I really thought he was going to go there just because, especially with their success last season, and they have a decent amount of room to fit a guy like that on their roster.
Weren't the caps in the question as well?
At the trade deadline, they were feeling him out, but there was no world in which that was probably going to happen, just with his salary cap hit. And I'm glad it didn't because they ended up winning the cup. So I'm glad they didn't try to make a splashy move. It's interesting. I think the Sharks, generally speaking, are an interesting team. They kind of like the Capitals, just seem like I think they have been to one cup final, but it just does not seem like they can get over that hump. I don't know. It's very strange. It just doesn't seem like they can get there. So I don't know. It's weird. I don't really get the move, to be honest with you. I mean, they have an incredible defense now. And I know, to be fair, the Sharks have a few good guys up front, but it is a strange... I mean, you can't blame a guy for wanting to go to California. It's certainly a nice weather change from Ottawa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. A little weird. I mean, they fit him on the team, and, I think the Sharks are still a decent team. They could still try to make a run at a cup here. I think that shows to me that they're really trying to push and they feel like they need to win now.
All right. Yeah. Any last thoughts?
My last thoughts are back to back.
Oh, yeah.
Back to back.
Yeah. Yeah, just like Oshie said in the parade.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah, a lot.
There were chants of that last night at the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, of course. Hopefully they can do it.
It's a weird thing, the NHL playoffs, but I will say, you get, I think it was 18 of your 20 guys to return. You got to like those chances.
Oh, yeah.
You got to like those chances.
Yep. But some of the NHL is chance.
A lot of the NHL is chance.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, my man Josh, thank you for joining me in the studio again. That's about all the time we have for this episode of the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. I thank you so much for tuning in, and catch me on the next episode, week 5 recap. In hopefully we'll be talking about a Redskins victory in New Orleans after that choke job last year. That was just crazy. Chris Thompson getting injured, and then that's where everything just fell apart for the Redskins, and they just wanted to end the season and go home. Yeah. So until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next episode.